Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Committee of Adjustment. This is a meeting to consider applications for minor variance and consents that's held under the authority of the Planning Act of Ontario. Please keep in mind the intent of our process is to review the proposal that's before us, listen to all the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or any organizations. If a request for a deferral is made this evening and the committee grants such a request, the committee, after consultation with our Secretary-Treasurer, will set a new hearing date. No further notice will be provided unless there are changes to the application. In order to conduct an effective and efficient hearing, we've adopted the following process. The owner or authorized agent will be given the opportunity, if so desired, to briefly explain to us the basis of the application and then answer any questions that may arise out of the hearing. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for this presentation. You will need to state your full name and address for the record, and any materials submitted to the committee for viewing will remain the property of this committee. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of this committee. All persons attending the hearing who wish to support or oppose an application must also state their full name and address for the record. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for your presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chair of the committee. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes, again, will be at the discretion of this committee. If there are several speakers that share the same view, we ask that you elect a spokesperson to provide us with that opinion. We want to hear all the views, but repeating the same concerns or interests does not necessarily lead to a quicker decision. The owner or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to comments made by any interested parties and answer any questions from the committee members. This will be the owner or agent's opportunity to advise us of any concerns found in any of the conditions in any of the staff reports. The matter will then be taken to committee for decision, and that will mark the end of all discussions. Once the committee makes an oral decision, any person desiring a copy must file with our Secretary-Treasurer at this meeting a written request for notice of decision, and in the back wall there by the desk, we have green sheets that is provided for this purpose. We ask that you fill that out and leave it with us before you leave the hearing tonight. Please note that you must make a written request in order to be included on the list that is used by the Intermunicipal Board for the giving of any subsequent notice of any appeal. Written notice of our decision will be mailed not later than 10 days for minor variance and 15 days for consent to the applicant, the owner, and or agent, and any other person who filed a written request for such notice. If you do not agree with our decision, you may appeal this to the Ontario Municipal Board. The last date to appeal the decision will be noted on the decision itself. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, our decision becomes final and binding, and the Secretary-Treasurer will then notify the applicant through further written correspondence. People attending this meeting tonight are to be courteous to respectful members of the committee, town staff, and other people in attendance. We ask that you please turn off any cell phones or pagers, at least put them on vibrate, and also note that the meeting tonight is live streamed, and we will be available for future viewing on the town's live stream page at oakville.ca/live. Thank you. So we have one regret this evening. Mr. Mark Charlebois cannot be in attendance tonight. And do we have any declaration of any pecuniary interest? Mr. Tulowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm going to declare a conflict on CAV A057 at 310 Riverside. The agent works for an affiliated company of mine.
Okay. Thank you. We'll note that for the record. Anyone else? Seeing none. Okay, so we'll delve into the applications, but before we do, we don't have any consents tonight. So is there anyone here this evening that wishes to either withdraw or defer an application? Withdraw or defer.
Mr. Chair, this is not a request for a deferral, but it is a request for an adjournment. I don't know if you hear them first, or should I wait?
No, the deferral, adjournment, it's all in the same snack bracket.
Okay. If this is in regard to, it's item number 6 on your list.
Okay, what's the address?
49 Bronte Road.
Okay, can we have your name and address for the record?
My name is Lydia Moritz. That's spelled Moritz. and I reside at the Shores, located at 11 Bronte Road. It's Suite 620.
Okay, so are you the agent, the applicant,
I am, I'm representing actually the Board of Directors of the Shores, which is the condominium corp known as HSCC 6112, and it's located immediately adjacent to
okay.
the property.
So you're not here as an agent applicant, you're here as an interested party seeking an adjournment of, that's totally different.
Oh, yes, that's it.
Yeah, it's very different and unique.
Okay.
We're not going to deal with your request at the moment because in fairness, did you ask the other agent owner?
No, I wasn't, I don't know who he or she is, so I haven't spoken to
So
that
will the
person.
owner agent on that application raise their hand? He's right there. We found him for you.
Okay, so I've...
So we're not going to address this now. I don't know the nature of the concern or interest, but it's quite unusual for us to adjourn on the request of someone that we haven't heard yet. So now that you know who the agent owner is, you might want to just take some time and we'll call the application and then I'm sure you'll give us your pitch at that time.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so anyone else?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is David Capper, planning consultant with Glenn Schnarr & Associates. I'm here this evening to request a deferral of application CAV 050/2017 for the property at 413 Avon Crescent.
Okay.
The reason for the request is we received the comments on Friday afternoon from town staff. We've taken a good hard look at those comments, and we have revised our drawings to respond to some of the comments, and we'd like to take an opportunity to meet with staff and discuss those revisions.
Okay. Anyone here on application CAVA 50/2017 at 413 Avon Crescent? Okay. It looks like you may need to speak to more people.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that seems to be correct.
Okay. So I think a deferral is probably in order. Members, do you have any questions? Yeah. There was also the sign. Was it posted? Do you know?
I'm sorry?
Some.
I wasn't responsible for posting the
Okay.
sign, so I can't...
Anyways, now that you're on board with the application, I'm sure it'll run smoother in terms of posting. And then there was a bunch of people that showed their hands. We'll adjourn this matter. Our next available hearing date is the 9th of May. But we won't set it now, but you can call the Secretary Treasurer tomorrow and see if there's an earlier agenda item that we can get you on. But expect on the 9th, maybe the one earlier I think is the 25th. Starting to fill up, or it might be full, so we'll see what we can do. But connect tomorrow with our Secretary Treasurer and you can sort that out. You'll need to put new notice on anyways. And a deferral fee, of course.
Deferral fee.
Yes, indeed.
Right.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. There were a show of hands. Maybe you can follow Mr. Capper out and exchange emails or phone numbers and maybe have a quick discussion. Okay, thank you. And I apologize for those that were in attendance tonight on the matter. Okay, so we'll deal with application CAVA 51/2017 at 3060 Lakeshore Road West. Application CAV 51/2017 at 3060 Lakeshore Road West. Agent, owner here. Mr. Reynolds, anyone here on behalf of 2355054 Ontario Inc.? Okay, so we'll just set this application down and we'll see if anyone comes in. Do I have a phone number that, Mr. Charles? Do you have an available cell phone that we can maybe place a call while we proceed with the hearing, see if the agent or the owner is on their way? Maybe they got delayed. But you know what, we'll give it till about 7:30 and then we'll see if we need to make that call. Okay, so we'll keep this in abeyance for now. We'll proceed with our third item on the agenda, and that is application CAV 52/2017 at 274 Whiteoak Drive.
Good evening. My name is Justina Braniak, and I'm the property owner at 274 Whiteoak Drive.
This is CAV 52-2017?
Yes,
Okay. We had a different owner listed, but,
my husband.
okay, good. All right, is anyone here this evening that has an interest in this application, CAVA 52-2017 at 274 Whiteoak Drive? Okay, it looks like there's some people have an interest. Could you proceed with a quick presentation?
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman and the committee, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to address you this evening. My husband and I wanted to live in Oakville for some time. We consider this city to be one of the most desirable places in Canada. It took us a really long time to actually save up enough money to purchase a property, and we're very happy to have done that. We absolutely love the town. We are a relatively newly married couple, and we're just planning to start our family, and we want to build our dream home. And part of the planning process, as we were designing our dream home, it became apparent that we needed to ask for some small variances, adjustments. So if we wanted to ask you for your consideration regarding some of the changes that we want to make in order to build the home that we want to raise our family at. So there are 3 items that we've asked for. One of the items is related to increasing slightly the area, the square footage of the home. That would allow our parents to potentially live with us once we start having our children. The other variance is related to a setback, which would allow us to include a cold cellar in the home. And the third variance is related to a height. And I understand that this is related to allow to include a sanitary storm insert. From what I understand, it's something that we may not necessarily need, but we do want to have it in place for contingency reasons. So like I said, we really love the town, and we're very grateful that we had the opportunity to purchase this home, and we're very excited to start our building process, and we want your approval to proceed with these variances.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. So just on the front yard setback, it's really what you're saying is the building projects in the front yard, but only in the basement for the cellar, but not
Yes.
above grade.
That's what I understand, yes.
Well, is that what your application is, or is that what you understand? There's 2 different things.
May
I just
I-
want to make sure we have the right facts.
Absolutely. May I consult with my architect to
Sure.
make sure that I give you the correct
If the architect wants to add
information?
something to what you said, by all means.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. Mr. Architect.
My name is Anthony Del Grosso, and I'm the designer for the house. I'm not the architect, I'm technologist.
Okay, you're the designer, that's fair enough. So the
basically-
question is, the front yard setback is for the cellar below grade only?
Only the cellar. The
So
house.
above grade, the building is set back to meet the requirements of the bylaw?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and the height, can you explain a little bit to us, or I didn't quite understand what the sanitary storm connection was?
We just had some concerns with the invert levels for the sanitary storm, so just for contingency, we just allowed for that extra half meter if we need it, but it's something that we can drop if it's an issue.
Well, it's your application, I just,
We'd like to have the
obviously, the
half a
less
meter.
variances you have, the better, so I'm not going to tell you how to run your application, but...
I understand, we're just worried about the invert levels, so if it comes to it, we'll drop it and we'll go with the 2.
But we would like to request that, yes,
We'll keep it.
yes.
Okay.
We want to keep it.
All right, well, any questions of the designer or the owner at the moment? Mr. Talowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an odd question for the designer. Has your recent employment changed already?
Yes, it has.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I missed a question.
In Mr. Del Grasso's previous life, I may have had a conflict, but not in his current one.
I see. Fair enough. Sometimes I have a hard time following your logic, but thanks for correcting me. Any questions related to the specifics of the application at the moment? Seeing none. Okay, if you just want to have a seat nearby, we're going to hear where the concerns are, and we'll see where we go. Don't go too far. Okay. Yes, sure, whoever would like to come up first. You can actually sit with your architect just to give some people room there to make notes if they have to. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here on...
You can bend that a bit so you don't have to... Yeah, there
I'm a
you
little
go.
nervous. I don't usually speak in public. I'm here on behalf of my mother, who lives next door to 274 Whiteoak Drive.
And your name?
My name is Carla Honorado.
And you want to put your mother's name on the record?
Yes,
And her address?
Leonilde Honorado, Leonilde Honorato.
Honorado, okay, gotcha, thank you.
And I'm just going to read the letter that I did submit so that the public can hear our concerns. We are requesting the Committee of Adjustment and Planning Department not approve any of these three variance requests: height, size, and setback. My mother has been a resident there for over 50 years. She's the owner at 280 Whiteoak Drive, next door to the above-named location, and I'm here, like I said, on my mother's behalf. Our biggest concern of the three variance requests is the front yard setback variance. The committee should not approve the setback. The setback of the proposed house should not even slightly obstruct my mother's view from the front of her house at 280 Whiteoak as she looks out on the streets towards the south. The proposed design should be aligned with the rest of the houses along the street. The other two variance requests to height and size should not be approved. The height should be what is allowed by the town's committee, and the variance to increase the height should not be approved. The size of this dwelling is too big, and the proposed design of the house, excuse me, does not match the existing characteristics of the neighborhood. The house design should be more conducive while maintaining a proper size dwelling to go along with the lot size. This design, with or without any variances, is not conducive and does not contribute to the flow of the neighborhood. I have noticed in other older neighborhoods, such as ours in Oakville, that the most pleasant to the eye are the homes that have been built to a suitable size, like a 2-story or a 1.5-story house. The larger size designs are better suited to a newer suburb, not a 60-year-old neighborhood. Bigger does not mean better, and smaller is, what do they say, less is more. Our house has been the family home for over 50 years, and I grew up in that neighborhood. As is the case with many of our neighbors, we know the neighborhood very well. My mother and the other senior residents especially thrive in this neighborhood and are proud of it. When they welcome new neighbors, they're proud of it, especially young families, like the owner has mentioned. I feel I have this obligation to my mother and her longtime neighbors to write and express our concern for property owners who ask for variances when there is no need. I cannot control the decision to demolish the existing house to custom build, and my mother and I will need to accept this. However, we cannot accept the design of this house this big, nor any of the variance requests, because we feel it will disrupt the characteristics of this well-established area and well-sought-out area of Oakville. And we do expect professionalism and respect from the builders and contractors as they come and go from the site at 274 Whiteoak Drive. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? I just have a couple. I just want to know how far you think we can go in terms of design. Let's say if this, well, first of all, on the front yard setback, I think we had an answer that above grade, it meets the setback. Below grade, the cellar protrudes into that setback, so you wouldn't see it from the street.
Okay.
So I don't know if that makes a difference for you or not. It seems like your mother doesn't want any variances. Basically,
yes.
built, yeah. I mean, whether or not with or without any variances, it's not conducive or compatible with the flow of the neighborhood, which means it doesn't matter what you build here, unless it's one story, it's not the same.
Well, I've seen the ones on Hickson and Bronte where they've built up.
Right.
But it suits the neighborhood. So if they want to build up, but they can build up to whatever the committee is used to. Well, I don't understand why they have to go above that.
Well, I think we heard that the height is related to the ability to meet an invert. I'm not an engineer, but what I understand is there's certain simple engineering principle, water flows downhill. If it doesn't flow downhill, you got to figure out a way to do it, and I guess by raising it up a half a meter, you get that flow, but they seem to have suggested that it's not because they want to build a taller house, it's because they want to meet an engineering challenge, and they may be able to avoid that. So let's assume that's the case, and let's assume the front yard setback is below grade, you don't see it. We're left with the gross floor area. And it seems a gross floor area, they can address it by pulling the building in the back. It wouldn't change how it appears in front of the street, right? Because when we walk on the street, we only see the front, we don't see the back. Mm-hmm. Does that change your mother's?
I don't know. we'd have to think about it and.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak to this matter? Okay, we'll invite you to come back. Anything you wish to add from what you just heard?
I just wanted to thank our future neighbor for the comments, and I want to address the comment made in the letter about professionalisms of the people that we're going to employ. I just want to assure our neighbors that we'll do our due diligence to make sure that all of our neighbors are treated with respect and abide by appropriate rules.
Okay, so we have some letters here of support from one of your neighbors at 266 Whiteoak Drive. You aware of that?
No, I was not aware of that.
Were they? Okay, it says, hello, Jamina, which is spelled wrong, it's Jasmina. In regards to the above noted application, and this is CAV 50-2017, 274 Whiteoak Drive. In regards to the above noted application for variance being heard tonight by the Committee of Adjustment, I am a neighbor and would like the committee to know of my full support of all three variances being sought by the applicant. Thank you, Darshan Jain, homeowner at 266 Whiteoak Drive.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Tulowski?
Just if you could clarify, the information you gave was that the front yard variance is only required because of the fruit cellar under the porch, but when I look at the elevations, that's a fully covered porch with side walls and a roof over it. So, if I turn to A6, the projection of the front of the house is actually what I'll call a portico with a roof over it. It's
Yes,
not,
it is. It's a portico, but it's just two-story covered porch.
but it's,
But the front wall of the house, I guess,
Right.
the habitable space is to the setback.
right, the garage is at 8.17,
Yes.
but looks like 1.52 meters in front of that is actually a covered porch.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So it's not below grade, it's above grade.
The porch is, yes. And it's a two-story covered porch.
Yeah, but when I asked the question earlier, I think the answer was the setbacks required for the cellar, which projects in the front yard, but it's not something that you see from the street. Is that the case or not the case?
Well, you would, it's a two-story, yes, you would. It
So
is
you would
two
see it?
covered. Yes, you would.
Okay, which is not what you said earlier.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought you were asking about the porch, if it was.
Okay, well, that changes a little bit of the context. Any further questions? Okay, we'll take this matter to committee, thank you.
Thank you.
Who would like to move the recommendation? Have to appoint someone to start the process. Thank you, Ms. McLeod.
Mr. Chairman, this is a tough one for me. When I did my site visits and saw the area, I can see what the residents' concerns are. The housing stocks are actually predominantly very small bungalows with very few new builds in the area. I think if this house came back with a smaller square footage and aligned itself more, it'll still most probably stick out as the new builds in the area do. I understand that as it's presented before us, that the town does see it as not fitting within the housing stock, but I feel you know what, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recommend that we deny this application just on the merits of how it fits within the housing stock, that the variances before us are not minor in nature. When we take a look at the effect of on the neighborhood, I don't find that it does meet the four tests with its projections, as well as I'd be okay with the height for the engineering purposes. I understand we're always faced with many areas of drainage issues, but I can't support the residential floor area or the front yard setback.
Discussion on the recommendation? Mr. Hardcastle?
I too find this a challenging variance, series of variances to consider. Like my colleague, I am concerned with the massing of this house. In conjunction with the height and with the architectural design of the house, with long two-story elements and a full breadth of the building at the higher height, I am concerned with this, and I'll be supporting the motion put forward.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, okay, the recommendation is to refuse. All those in support? Those opposed? The application is being denied. Okay, we'll move on to application CAV 53-2017 at 56 Water Street. Good evening, sir. Name and address for the record.
Good evening, members of the committee. Mr. Chairman, my name is Richard Mann, and I'm the agent for the application at 56 Water Street. I live at 153 Woodhaven Park Drive in Oakville.
Thank you. Is there anyone here this evening that has an interest in application CAB 532017, at 56 Water Street? This is for a canopy construction. Anyone have an interest? Seeing none. Oh, you do? Ah, sorry. All right. Mr. Mann, can you give us a presentation, and then we'll invite the lady to come down and speak to the committee.
No problem.
Thank you.
The reason for the variance is the Oakville Club would like to replace the existing wooden footbridge that gives them access from the street level over to the building. It'll be a steel and concrete construction, and it also has a small canopy component to protect the front door. The reason for the variances are the canopy. The existing site is actually such that the existing building has basically a zero setback in some of the areas, and also the zoning bylaw changed, so the new zoning bylaw required a greater setback. The placement of the canopy section, or the columns to the canopy, is what required the setback variance. And then the other one was under the new bylaw as well, we required a coverage variance. It was really because under the old bylaw we didn't require the coverage, but under the new one we do. So it's a matter of sort of getting all those things, the ducks aligned to meet the new bylaw.
Moment. Okay. Seems to be a long list of previous variances on this property. At least we have a few here.
Yeah, it's a tight site,
Yeah.
down in the river valley.
Okay. If you don't mind having a seat, we'll ask the lady that showed her hand to come forward and speak to us. Good evening. Can we have your name and address for the record?
Good evening. My name is Patricia Waitley.
You can pull that microphone down if you'd like.
Thank
there
you.
you go.
Is that better?
Oh, way better. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia Waitley. I'm the closest neighbour to the Oakville Club. I have a heritage.
Sorry, your address?
115 William Street, Oakville.
Lane?
Oakville at 115 William Street.
William Street, okay.
It's on the corner of Water Street and
Yes.
William Street. I'm just concerned the property is a heritage property. We have had occasional differences in the past. I have been unable to see the documentation due to problems, and I would like to see it up on the screen if I could. I'm not sure how far out this porch will be above the front door of the Oakville Club, and
So,
whether or not...
Mr. Mann, can you help us, orientate us and show us, so we can get down to the root of the issue? Just put it on the overhead projection so we can all see it. We may need to dim the lights. Can everyone see it now?
So this is the front wall right now. This is the existing footbridge. So that would be replacing the existing footbridge.
Same size?
Same size. And then 1.74 meters out, so just less than 6 feet, we'll have the canopy there. And it's just a simple shed canopy.
And can you orientate us where your premises are, Miss? If you were to point on the map generally?
Be over here somewhere on the
Oh,
other side.
where is William?
It comes down here. Water Street comes down here.
Okay, yes. I'm right on the corner of William and Water, which are a continuation of each other right beside the Oakville Club.
Right.
Okay.
My entrance to my garden garage is on that corner.
Okay, thank you.
And this is the drawing, so it's...
This looks as if it has Is that setback?
This is just a section through it. So this is cutting through the landing of the walkway. And then so there'll be a railing on either side, just like they have now, right here. And then this is the column, and that's the roof.
And what length is the roof now going to be outstanding?
So usually what we do is we have questions come through the chair, but it seems like you haven't had a chance to connect. And maybe a little dialogue will help.
Okay.
So why don't I recommend that we hold this item down, if you can go orientate the deputant in terms of the factors and the matters, and it may make a difference. That way we can have an informed opinion as to any concerns that may arise. So we'll hold you down till the next meeting, to the next application, and then you can come back and share with us any results of your conversations, and then we'll make a decision.
No problem.
Is that fair?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we'll just...
The trouble is, I'm going to be away, so have you any idea when the meeting will be?
Oh, no, we're going to decide it tonight.
Next
Tonight.
issue. Next
Yes,
issue.
but I'm going to give you 5 minutes to sort of get the information that I think you haven't had a chance to obtain. So that way, when you speak to us on this, at least we're comfortable that you're informed and you're giving us your best information possible as to your concerns that may arise. Okay, so we're going to take the next application, hold you down just for that one short period of time. Is anyone here other than what we have so far that has an interest in this application? Because if you do, you should go out at the same time. Okay, so we're just going to slightly defer this. And we'll proceed on application CAV 54-2017, 1211 Willbrook Drive. The owner agent, come forward, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Joris Kieran, Kieran Design, Inc. I'm the agent for the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Kieran. Is there anyone here this evening that has an interest in application CAV 54-2017 at 1211 Willbrook Drive? Okay, we've done our site visit, read the staff report and studied the plans. Is there anything further? Members, do you need a presentation? Do you have any items of clarification? Is there anything, sir, you wish to add to the application?
I don't think so. I think staff covered it. They're supporting the application, and I'm here to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, it seems like we're well informed and ready to proceed on the decision. Who would like to move a recommendation? Mr. Tulowski, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move the application be approved as applied for, finding that it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. The variance represents a very consistent stepping of the street line. We'll note that there was no objection from the public, and I'd make that approval subject to development proceeding in general accordance with the drawings provided, and that a permit issue within 2 years.
Okay, yes. Yes, yes. Condition on the basis of the plans dated March 2nd, 2017. Any discussion on recommendation? Seeing none, all those in support? No one opposed, the application being approved.
Thank you.
I just want to go slightly back to the application that no one showed, and it was CAV 51-2017 at 3060 Lakeshore Road West. Is the owner agent here? Not yet, eh? It's now 20 to 8. Should we make a call? Mr. Charles, do you mind making a call for us while we continue with the hearing?
I can do that if you have a phone number.
Do you need a cell?
No.
You're okay? Okay, we'll just continue until application CAV 55-2017 at 49 Bronte Road. Owner agent, come forward.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Name and address for the record.
My name is Jack Neal, Jackneal.
Okay, do we record that?
And my it's 481 North Service Road West.
Okay, let's just see first if there's anyone here that has an interest in application CAV 55-2017 at 49 Bronte Road. Okay. Well, come on forward. I just want to know if you had any progress in your discussions, because you asked for an adjournment, which is quite an unusual request coming from a non-applicant, but just wanted to hear if you had any progress in your dialogue.
No, I wasn't, we weren't able to come to a consensus about the adjournment.
Okay, so what we'll do, just because you have a motion on the floor to adjourn, we'll hear why it's necessary to adjourn, and we'll rule on that, and then we'll see where we go from there. Okay, so I invite you to give us some brief remarks why adjournment is necessary, or a deferral.
Thank you.
Your name and address again for the record? And can you speak to the mic, because our hearing is tough in here.
Okay. My name is Lydia Moritz, Moritz. I live at the Shores in Suite 620 in Oakville. And as I indicated earlier, Mr. Chair, I am a former member of the Board of Directors at the Shores. It's a condominium known as HSCC 612. And I'm acting tonight as a representative and agent on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Shores. I am a lawyer, but I'm not acting in my capacity as a lawyer. I'm acting in my capacity as an agent for the condominium corps, and I'm also obviously a citizen. The residents, first of all, the application for the request, the request for the adjournment of these proceedings relates again to the Board of Directors. The residents at the Shores recognize the value of the community of local restaurants, Yolanda's in particular. But we are very concerned about the noise factor, especially.
So here's what I'm going to cut you off.
Yep.
I don't want to hear about your concerns,
Okay.
the issues that arise as a result of the variance. I want to know administratively why we cannot proceed with the application. You know, like I want to hear lack of notice, things like that. Anything that arises and any defects that of notice or anything that would prevent us from proceeding with the hearing. But if you'll have an opportunity, if this application proceeds, to express your concerns fully.
Well, the request for the adjournment is because the condominium, the Shores, consists of 202 suites as well as 9 townhouses. And the condominium corporation isn't as nimble, if you will, as individuals who live in homes next door to each other or in the vicinity of where the variance request is being made. This is a number of people living in a condominium corporation, in a condominium building, and it takes time to canvass opinions, but it also takes time to mobilize. It's just not as nimble as people and regular citizens. And the problem that the condominium corp has is that they want to do some investigating. For example, they're looking at possibly involving a professional assessment by an acoustic engineer in order to recommend possible solutions for the noise problem. The board is certainly open to discussing it with the town to address that issue as well. But it takes time to be able to have those communications and to be able to investigate with an acoustic engineer or any other professional about the noise. That takes time, so we can't comment on it without that expert input. In addition, there are concerns about, and we are seeking a supplementary report from the building department. The building department, because there were, in the report that was provided, there was no indication, like there was an indication in the report that building permits were not obtained and stop orders were made. So we just want to have the opportunity to investigate, but the ultimate goal is to creatively problem solve. This is not an antagonistic position by the Shores or the board. We just require time. And in my respectful submission, granting of the adjournment would not prejudice Yolanda's. They're going to be able to continue to operate business as usual, and it doesn't interfere with their business operations, but it does provide the Shores with the opportunity for the time which it requires to make those investigative inquiries. So they're not able to make submissions today without that information. from third parties, professionals.
Is deferred, would the Shores be willing to pay the deferral fee?
Oh, I didn't know there was a deferral fee,
Oh,
sir.
you didn't hear us earlier. What's the deferral fee? It's a bit south of 700.
$700?
Yes, right?
Well, I can't, obviously. I wouldn't be able to, I have no direction from the board on that
Okay.
issue. So I wouldn't be able to agree to that.
So have your concerns on, see, does the condominium corporation have, they have a board?
Yes,
And they
we
have
do.
a board that's assigned to deal with matters like this? Has the board met?
The board of directors meets monthly, but clearly, when need arises, they will meet more regularly.
Did they
than
meet
that.
on this particular matter?
Yeah, well, in terms of, yes, they did consult.
Did they
on this.
resolve to assign you to come to the committee
Yes,
tonight?
they did, yes, absolutely. I'm
Okay.
acting definitely as their agent. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't.
All right.
But again, it's just, no, I didn't know about the deferral fee, but again, and I don't know if anyone has gone to the site to see it, but I
Yes,
can
we've done our site
advise,
visits.
sir, that with the addition, this patio was an open-air patio, so it was
Right.
never an issue. Sound was never a problem. But now that they've constructed walls, windows, extended the patio, and have, on the construction beam that they've put inside what was once an outdoor patio, 4 or 5 speakers, it's now become an issue, the sound. So what they've done, I mean, historically, it was never an issue. It has become one now as a result of the structures that they have built without a building permit, I might add, and I think in the face of a stop order. So
Okay, well, thank you for your submissions.
Thank you.
We'll,
Mr. Chair, a deferral fee is $656.
$656.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any submissions on the deferral? Do you want to have a minute to consult with Mr. Nelson?
Yes, please.
Oh, I should ask while you're consulting, is there any questions of the representative from the condo corporation? Seeing none? Okay, thank you.
I just spoke with David. We think that the issues at hand could be taken up with the noise bylaw as opposed to what we're here for today. But if you're willing to pay the deferral fee, then I think we'd obviously much rather proceed tonight. But if you'd be willing to pay the deferral fee, so we don't, it's not something that we brought up, then I think that would be appreciated.
Has anyone contacted you prior to tonight?
No.
No?
No. We got the letter and we read that, but nobody to our office.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. Well, is any questions of the agent? Seeing none. We'll take this matter to committee. I'd just like a resolution on whether or not this matter should be deferred or adjourned. Who would like to move a recommendation? Mr. Telesky, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm personally not swayed that deferral adjournment is in order because the corporation couldn't act quickly enough. I'm satisfied that the legal notice was given, and I would move that we continue with this application tonight.
Discussion on recommendation? I'd like to add, I was along the same lines. I thought if there was a genuine issue, that notice has been out there for quite a period of time now, to defer the matter because someone wants to retain an expert, I don't think it's genuine. It should have happened in any instance. But there's more prejudice caused to the applicant who's gone through the process than there is to the deputant who asked for deferral. We're going to hear the matter. Everyone in support of proceeding with the matter? Okay, we're going to proceed with the matter, and I think everyone's going to get a fair opportunity to listen to the application and then give us informed decisions on their concerns, if any. Proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, yeah, the minor variance in question is to permit the existing...
Sorry, we need your name and address.
Oh, sorry, again.
Is that what you want? Yeah. Just proceed a little bit slow and speak into the mic. You might need to lift it up. You're a bit taller than...
Okay. Do you need my name again, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
So Jack Neal, Jackneal. I'm with Ruth Victor and Associates at 481 North Service Road West.
All right. So you're telling us why the variances should be approved?
Right, so yeah, the minor variance is to permit the existing closed patio, which is on the northwest corner of the site. It simply replaces a pre-existing open patio, which was on the same location, and the change of use of the land has not altered since this has been built, and it's been a restaurant for the past couple of years. The reason for the variance is there's a holding provision on the lands, and it's a holding provision that's been in place in growth that's been put on growth areas throughout Oakville. As relates to this land, the holding provision permits certain architectural features to be added to buildings such as awnings and canopies. However, specifically a closed patio is not permitted directly. So the site has frontage onto Bronte and Marine Drive, and the Bronte Harbour is just across onto to the left here, to the west. It's used as a restaurant. It's designated as Main Street 1 in the official plan and mixed-use zoning. There was a heritage permit that was approved last year, October 2016, for the construction of the patio to go ahead. The patio, it's a conversion of a pre-existing patio that already existed. There hasn't been any change in terms of it's not a brand new use of the land. It extends the legal use of the building. This is a heritage building, and then there's a parking lot, and this is the subject patio. The area, it's within Bronte, it's a designated growth area, which encourages development that is especially encourages development that's geared towards sort of walkability, increasing the urban form. And this patio was designed with these in mind. And so it enhances the streetscape on both Marine Drive and Bronte Road, creates a commercial space within close proximity to the public realm while respecting the heritage building to the south and the commercial buildings to the north. It meets all the other zoning requirements in terms of setback and height and land use. It makes good use of its location. It's a patio that extends, again, the use of what was already permitted. It's compatible with the surrounding area. There's commercial to the top along Bronte Road and then to the corner on Marine Drive, and it fits with that. It doesn't result in any adverse impacts on in terms of shadow or overlook or privacy. It's a non-permanent seasonal structure that conforms to the zoning and the overall intent of the official plan. It's appropriate for the site and minor in nature, and we would concur with the staff comments regarding the redesign of the elevations on Marine Drive, and this is something we'll be happy to work to address in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Sir, do you know what the purpose of the holding is on the zoning?
Yeah, so the holding provision is to ensure that the aspects necessary to support growth in designated growth areas are provided prior to development.
So if it wasn't for the holding symbol on this, like how long has the hold been on the property?
It was hang on a sec. It's been in place since it was consolidated in 2014.
So what, for 5 years, 10 years?
Yes. Yep. So it permits. So basically, there's three sections as it relates to the subject property, and it's just to do with architectural features. It permits awning canopies and various gutters. It's just not designated specifically for a patio.
Right. So my question is, if it wasn't for the hold,
it would be permitted.
Then it would be a permitted use.
Right.
And the hold is unrelated to the use of the canopy. It's related to something else that Mr. Gabe Charles wants to add to that. Sir?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, all I was just going to clarify was that the holding provisions have been in place since the consolidated bylaw was adopted in 2014.
Right, and it was put in there to do what we just heard?
It was, sir, to allow for, it does allow for some minor additions, et cetera, to existing buildings. The intent is that the hold would be lifted once the such things as servicing are addressed, bonusing, those types of issues, should they be required prior to.
So it's a mechanism to control growth.
Yes.
Not to prohibit uses that are otherwise permitted in the bylaw. At least they suspend them temporarily.
Correct.
And would this be considered like growth?
No, sir, it is, as the applicant had identified, it's an existing patio. What they're looking at currently is the structure around the patio.
Right, okay. Any questions? Is there speakers on the patio, live music?
Yes.
Is it live music or
there's
just?
no live music with the speakers.
And what are the hours of operation of those speakers, do you know?
It closes at 11, I believe. Yep,
Okay,
11. That's the owner, by the way.
sorry?
That's the owner of the property.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, do you want to come and give us your name and address and give us specifics on your speaker locations or where they're directed and when are these shut off and all that? Because I think that's part of the concern that we heard, maybe.
My name is Michael Mercanti, okay? And I think I just want to say that the patio, it had speakers on it 3 years ago. It had speakers on it 10 years ago. It's been a restaurant for 22 years, and so that's all I'm going to say. That
Okay.
It's been a
No, fair
restaurant
enough.
for that amount of time, and
Yep. And does this need a building permit? Will you need to get a building permit?
yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any further questions?
Yeah.
See none, okay, thank you both. You can have a seat. Okay, who would like to speak to the committee on application CAVA 55-2017 at 49 Bronte Road? This is your chance to tell us your concerns.
I'm in a difficult position. First of all, I will be speaking not on behalf of the Shores and the condominium corp, but I would be now speaking as an owner.
Sure, that's fine. We can register you as an owner. We have your unit 620. I think it's recorded.
That's correct.
Yes.
And I'm divided. I will make a few submissions.
Thank you.
I have, just to deal with the sound issue. That's the only issue I really want to address. And I have taken photos of the inside of the patio. And you can see the speakers, you can see where they're located, and you can see that these are new locations because they're being put on the new structure. And I think it's important for this committee to see what I'm talking about, because an open-air patio is one thing with speakers on the side of the building. It's a whole other situation when there is now a structure built over the patio. And the speakers are actually attached across the entire patio, which was never possible before because there wasn't a structure there. And so the suggestion that, oh, well, there's always been speakers. Yes, there have always been speakers, and it wasn't an issue in the past. But now that they've placed them in a new location across the patio, on an open-air patio, essentially, that has become a serious noise problem. Now, the owner has indicated he closes at 11, and I'm a little confused by that statement. They're open till like a bar, and they have also now have a bar stools. They have a huge bar under this patio that never existed before. So the noise levels have absolutely gone up, and that was the only concern of the Shores, the board at the Shores, and it was now a concern for me personally as an owner who is now, and many other people, more so the people that are actually living right on the side of of Yolanda's. But I don't show if you're interested in looking at these photos.
Well, you can put them up the screen, but does your unit face the?
No.
You're on the other side?
Yes, I'm facing onto the lake.
Right, so you don't face onto this, so.
No, but I've been impacted by the sound, and my husband went and complained, and and was rebuffed by, I don't know, I can't say it was the
But
owner,
you're familiar,
it was
the town has
manager.
noise bylaws, right?
Well, I'm aware that they have noise bylaws, but the reality is this is a bar, basically. It's a patio that serves liquor now. And so, and it now has a bar literally, I don't know how many feet, perhaps the owner
Right.
could tell you how many feet the bar is, many. And people sit there and they drink. And so the whole atmosphere of that patio has changed. And we're not opposed to the changes, it's just the noise. And it's the structure that allows that noise. So if the owner would agree that there's a time frame by which those speakers are not used, rather than at, till 1 o'clock in the morning, that would be certainly helpful in trying to resolve that issue. But the building, the structure that he's built has permitted that. But for that, there wouldn't be an issue. And I
Okay,
guess those-
thank you for your submit. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Did
Anyone
you want
else?
to see a picture?
Well, no, you're going to leave that with us. That's
I
our
am?
property. That's
Okay.
our property now.
Fine, you can, okay.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the committee on application CAV 55, 2017, and 49 Bronte Road? Okay, thank you. So anything you wish to add, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just two things. Again, the fact that it's now a bar and was a restaurant, it's a permitted use in both the official plan and the zoning, and that hasn't changed. And the patio roof is retractable. It can be brought back, so it's not a fixed roof per se, and it can open up, so it would be like it used to be before. The speakers were mounted onto the new thing because they had to be taken down when it was built, so that's why they're on the new structure. And that's all I have.
So where are the new speaker locations? Have there been new speaker locations?
I don't.
Are they portable speakers and you locate them anywhere?
Michael?
I can't hear it from there, yeah.
So the entire patio,
Yes.
from the front side of Bronte Road, it all opens up. So
Right.
so all of our glass opens up, and so does our roof. So for it to be called a closed patio, that's not the case, because we have it completely open from 11:30 a.m. until 10 p.m., exactly how it was 3 years ago, 5 years ago, and prior to me taking possession of the patio in 2014, the patio did have 4 speakers on it, and we have 5 speakers on it. So there's always been a sound system that's in place, and the speakers they're not portable speakers, they're mounted on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you're aware of the town's noise bylaw?
Yes, I am. I've never had a
complaint?
I've never had a town bylaw complaint.
Okay, thank you.
Regarding the noise, or please show up. I've never had any issues.
Okay, thank you. Any
Okay.
questions? Okay, we'll take this back to committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Who would like to move a recommendation on this application? Mr. Zalewski, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm going to move this application be approved as applied for. This is an existing use, a continuation of an existing use. It's not a new use. I'm not sure, probably a very fine line between the existing canopies that are permitted under the bylaw and the issue we're dealing with here tonight. I do acknowledge the objections from the adjacent condominium, but as the applicant said, I too believe it's more of a case of the town's noise bylaw as opposed to the issues that we're tasked with dealing with under the test of the Planning Act. So, Mr. Chair, I'm moving approval, finding that it meets the test of the Planning Act, making the approval subject to condition requested by staff that appropriate drawings be provided to the satisfaction of the director and that a building permit be issued.
So, installing the two-year building permit provision?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks. So subject to those three conditions. Any discussion on the recommendation? Seeing none, all those in support? No one opposed, the application has been approved. Okay, we're going to go back to CAVA 53-2017 at 56 Water Street. Mr. Mann, Ms. Wheatley, have you had the opportunity to have a discussion? Three. Building permit and 3 years. Yeah, the building permit, yeah, the two conditions, you're right, yeah, two conditions. Welcome back. Ms. Wheatley, have you had an opportunity to have your questions answered?
Yes, very
Okay.
clearly.
Is there anything you wish to add so we can put on the record any concerns that you have?
No, Mr. Mann has explained extremely well to me. There are really very few changes. The structure will be stronger, which is good, and there will be a small roof over so that people don't get wet when they come out of the front door.
Sounds like
Apart
he
from
converted you from objector to a supporter.
It's my job.
I'm a supporter now.
Well done,
yes.
Mr. Mann. Okay, well, oftentimes it's a little dialogue and explanation assist. We find that it's, helpful for the parties to get together, and even in advance of coming here, so I'm glad to see that. Is there any questions? Seeing, is there anyone else that has an interest in application CAVA 53-2017 at 56 Water Street? Okay, we'll take this matter into committee. Thank you very much. Who would like to move a recommendation? Mr. Hardcastle, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I am satisfied that the requested variances conform to the test of the Act, and I would note that the stated concerns of the resident have been addressed to her satisfaction and to my satisfaction, so I'll put forward a motion of approval subject to two conditions, the first being that the proposed canopy be constructed in general accordance with the plans as submitted, and the second being our 2-year provision that the variance will expire within 2 years if a permit's not been issued.
Thank you. Discussion on recommendation? Mr. Talowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just think this would be appropriate time to remind Mr. Mann and I guess all applicants of the value of speaking to your neighbors prior to coming to the committee meeting. A lot can get achieved that way.
Okay. Thank you for putting that on the record. Any further discussion or recommendation? Seeing none, all those in support, subject to the conditions, the application being approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're just going to go back and see if there's anyone here yet on application CAV 51-2017 at 3060 Lakeshore Road West. You're here.
I'm a resident who lives nearby this particular application, and I wrote a letter, and it's on, I believe it's with the secretary.
Okay, so you're here expressing a concern, but we don't have the applicant or agent here. That's a problem for us.
No, it's not. It's already been, it had already been declined in 1998.
Oh, okay, well, we don't know any of that yet. We're not going to take any evidence. I want to hear from Mr.
You're doing well to apprise yourself.
Right. Well, we're pretty familiar with everything, but we don't know everything. Mr. Charles, did you manage to get a hold? So what we're going to do is we're going to continue to hold this down, and I appreciate, you know what, maybe we should consider deferring this and let the applicant pay a deferral fee so we don't keep the residents here unnecessarily. They're not here. It's, we waited a reasonable period of time. It's, well, then we're going to have to hold the residents here all this time, till 10 o'clock for someone that no shows. And we reached out. We waited over an hour now. So I think we're going to defer this matter just so we're not keeping the residents here. And if the owner happens to show up between now and the end, have you checked your email?
Yes, I have checked. I haven't got that.
Okay, so we've done all our due diligence that we possibly could in the middle of a hearing. We've reached out by telephone. Can you confirm that, Mr. Charles?
Mr. Chairman, I called both his office number and his cell number as it was provided on his business card.
Okay, thank you. And we have no email. So we're going to adjourn this matter. We're not going to fix the date. We're going to require a new notice.
And also a deferral fee
And also deferral fee, yes.
to be paid by agent or
Well, whoever,
applicant.
someone.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we're impartial to who pays the fee as long as it gets collected.
With the applicant.
Thank you. Okay, this matter is going to get adjourned. Sir, there'll be a new notice posted, And we apologize for keeping you here, and in fairness, we don't want to keep you here for the whole of the night in case there's a no-show. And if the agent or owner happens to show up between now and then, we'll give him the good news that he's been deferred. Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Have a good night. Okay, so that's being deferred. In some jurisdictions, they deal with applications and they proceed to refuse them if the agent doesn't show, so.
He's lucky.
Yeah, in a way, he might be lucky. Okay, so just remind me, we're at CAV 5620, okay, CAV 56 2017 at 2774 South Sheridan Way.
My name's Dave Bernard. I'm with Sapless Architects, or Architecture Planning Initiatives. We're the agent for this file. The proposed...
Well, hang on, before you go. So I only interrupt people because our procedural bylaw allows us to dispense of a full presentation in circumstances where it's not required. It's not only efficient, but it also, makes sense. We've already done our site visit, studied the plans, and read the staff report. So we come to this meeting fairly prepared. Is there anyone here this evening that has an interest in application CAV 56-2017 at 2774 South Sheridan Way? Okay, so there's a wave of hands. So on no circumstances, we ask for a presentation.
I don't need to do one?
Sorry?
I don't need to do a presentation?
No, there was a couple of wave of hands back there. You want to show again?
I was looking the wrong way, I guess.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay, so let's proceed on the presentation, sir.
Okay, my name is Dave Bernard. I live at 926 Drysdale Crescent, Milton, Ontario. The application before you is for 4 minor variances. The first minor variance we're seeking is for a parking reduction. The new bylaw actually requires more parking than the older bylaws, and it's based on a net floor area. Our net floor area is actually going up because we're increasing the breakfast room area, which is intended for guest use only. So because of the calculation, we're just basically doing house cleaning for the parking deficiency. There's 127 rooms in this hotel. There's 122 parking spaces. That's a 0.96 ratio. You're pretty much 1-to-1 is what every municipality requires, except for in Oakville and Mississauga. The second minor variance is for I guess I should read them in order. The second minor variance is for, that was actually number 1, was to permit the patio. We want to take the patios are seasonal. We just ask that the patio not be included in the parking calculation as per the zoning bylaw. And the reason for that is that the owner is putting a patio in there, but he's unsure of the size at the moment, so he just wants to not be handicapped by putting a seasonal patio in there, which again is for guest use. So it really doesn't demand more parking because it's for the intended use of the hotel, not for other people that are coming to the hotel. The third variance we're asking for is under the new zoning bylaw, you require a 1.8 meter buffer between parking and a building. Our current building does not have that building, and we're extending the garbage at the back right here. So we're just extending in line with the existing garbage enclosure, making it slightly bigger because they're finding it a little tight in there. So we need a variance to bring it up to today's standards. And the last variance, off the top of my head, I think I just mentioned them all. They're all mentioned, sorry, I apologize, all 4 of them. Does anybody have questions?
Confirm that you've submitted your parking justification report as noted in the planning report in advance, and you've had the opportunity for town comments and circulations, and they seem to accept your justification on the parking standards, finding that the parking provided meets the intended uses on the property?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Bernard? Mr. Bernard, right?
Yeah.
Bernard, yes. Mr. Tulowski, did you have a question? Okay. Okay, sir, don't go too far away. Sit in the front there, and we'll ask you to come back. There was a couple show of hands back there. If whoever would like to come down first. I guess you're it, sir.
My name is David Black, for the record. I live at 1467 Gibson Drive, which is right across from the hotel. And I would just like to, is that the information you require? I would just like to go on record not to discuss, but to present the objections from the community for the parking. Mr. Bernard, he wants to minimize this bylaw, and by saying that most communities have a 1-to-1 ratio, with the exception of Oakville and Mississauga. I think the question is why is that bylaw there for the parking? And this sounds minor in relation to the patio, but a few years back when they applied for an expansion of the hotel and to build it taller, there was an issue there, and the parking was the cornerstone of the violation of the Cocoa community, but apparently that wasn't enough to stop the building. I would congratulate the hotel on some of the changes that they did with our comments a few years ago, and it's a pleasing, and they did make some adjustments, so I think that was great. But parking, to me is not minimal. There isn't enough spaces now, according to the bylaw, and to say the intent is to just serve patrons of the hotel, this is a busy area. There's a Wendy's, Tim Hortons, other food places, and 3 hotels east of this hotel. So to say the intent is just to serve the patrons of the hotel, that may not be what in fact plays out in reality. It's already busy with cars coming and going, so it's not just parking, it's increased traffic flow in the area. And Gibson Drive across from there, there's young kids and people walking their dogs. They come up one side of the street and cross at the stop sign, which is right across from the hotel, and come down the other side of the street. So we're concerned about the increased traffic flow as well with the outdoor patio. And originally there was no food or beverages to be served outside of this hotel. It was supposed to only be inside the hotel, which currently is enforced. So to me, this is not a minor variation, and I would just question why the mandate is there in the first place for the parking, and why we feel we can keep pushing the limits of the mandate for the required parking spaces. That's about all I have to say, and thank you for your time.
No, thank you. It's always nice to, but don't go away. I think maybe the disadvantage that you may have is that, did you read the parking justification report that was filed by the applicant in support of the application?
If not having read that is a disadvantage, then no, I have not.
Okay, because this was filed in advance.
Yeah, I understand that with your beginning comments, but the purpose of this evening is
it's dated April 21st, 2016, so it's been filed almost a year ago, so.
Why are we having this meeting tonight? I
want
to go on record for my statements.
No, you're entitled to go on record. I'm not saying anything, but this parking study, at least from the record, it seems to have been vetted by the town, who have knowledge of.
It was vetted 2 years ago, but now with the increased, there's now, the bylaw says more parking spaces because of the outdoor patio.
Well, here's what I wanted to inform you of, and maybe what I'll do is I'll leave you a copy of this, because they, as part, and the agent can but you see, we read our materials, and what this seems to suggest is that they've accommodated the ratio that was approved by the board in this proposal. So they're not changing that ratio. In fact, based on their analysis and justification, they're providing more based on the ratio approved by the board.
Thank you.
That's what they say, and the
Thank you
town
for
seems
bringing
to.
that to my attention.
Mr. Charles, is that a fair summary? Not to get into the depths of the analysis.
I'm at a bit of a disadvantage because I haven't had a chance to review that parking study. But,
Okay, fair enough.
I'm going based on staff's comments in the report.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Black. Any questions of Mr. Black? Seeing none. Anyone else wishing to speak to the committee? Okay. Yes, come on down.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Carol Deeth. I live at 1432 Gibson Drive, and I am here representing the ratepayers group, COCA.
COCA, what does that stand for?
Clearview Oakville Community Alliance.
Okay.
I have, my original question was about overflow parking, because it is correct, Mr. Black, saying that the hotel eating area was originally designed for guests only, with the parking attributed to the number of rooms. So our concern at the moment as a residents group is, I feel the parking issue has been addressed with the parking report that I've read, but the concern is the drawings that were available to us online, as you see on the screen above there. The hotel has gone through adding another floor and renovations and are almost finished, but I can't tell from the drawing whether the breakfast area that is specified there is another add-on to the existing building or not.
I believe it is, but we'll have the agent clarify that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak to the committee? Okay, sir, if you can come back.
I'll go in reverse order. That's where my brain works. The blue areas on the plan are the additional areas on the plan. The reason we're actually putting these additions on, the brand has asked for more breakfast area for the extra 20 or 30 rooms we put on last year.
So the 30 rooms was done with the building permit as of right?
With the building permit, through site plan approval.
As of right?
As of right.
No required variances?
Actually. It's built and almost done.
And so the brand says because we added more rooms, we need a bigger breakfast area?
Yes. Technically, the brand's giving us a waiver and allowing us less room. We're going with the smallest we can possibly build in this space because they actually require more space for the amount of rooms, but we don't have the land, and we want to add us the small little patio area as well. So we've gone one step further, and there was a noise concern brought up by the residents an eon ago before they went to the OMB. So what the owner's actually doing, he's actually creating a courtyard to keep the noise inside as well. Like he's creating basically a wall. As you can sort of see, it's sort of like a hedge that goes around here to enclose the patio. So that's one thing the owner's trying to do. The shortage of parking, we technically only need, we're proposing an addition of net floor area of 60 square meters. Well, 1 per 30 square meters is only 2 parking spaces more we require. So the only reason for the minor variance and the cleanup is that it's a difference between bylaws. You had
The new bylaw.
The new bylaw.
Right.
So the new bylaw requires that. If we were applying to what your old bylaw was, it would have been 1-to-1.
Right.
So it's just we're doing house cleaning.
So you build the structure under the old bylaw, and now when you do the improvements, you're caught by the new bylaw?
Yeah, we're caught by the new bylaw and new things. Like there's one more, which I forgot to mention, was the kitchen area. Well, the new bylaw caps it at 70 square meters. Well, we've had way bigger than 70 square meters from day one. We had 186. And in the way the definition of the bylaw is different from generation to generation, so we have to include this new additional area. So I think we're applying for 247, just house cleaning again.
All right, thank you. Any questions?
I can speak to the other parking problem that he was mentioning. The old plan, which went to the board, actually had a 0.71 ratio. They actually were not putting an addition on the top floor. They were actually putting an addition on the side of the building, which was roughly 30 rooms, which was taking out, I think, about 30 parking spaces.
Right. That was my question. How can you put, so So the addition went differently, so
The
you freed
addition
up
went
some
differently.
ground floor.
We weren't part of that application. That was
Okay,
another
gotcha.
architectural firm. This was our rendition. Go up, it actually is lower than what the existing roof was, because it was a peaked roof before.
All right. Any questions of Mr. Bernard? All right, see none. We'll take this back to committee. Thank you. Okay, who would like to move a recommendation on this application?
Mr. Chairman, given the parking analysis that is before us, I'm satisfied that the calculations do meet the intent of the bylaw and the official plan. And I do concur with staff that the requested variances do maintain that. I'll move a motion to approve the application as submitted before us with the condition that the proposed addition be constructed in general accordance with the drawings as submitted and subject to final site plan approval, as well as the, do they need a building permit for the patio? Yeah. Okay, so the approval will expire in 2 years from the date of the decision if the proposed development has not proceeded or a building permit not issued.
Okay, thank you. Is there a discussion on that recommendation? Seeing none, all those in support? No one opposed, your application has been approved. Okay, we'll proceed with CAV 57-2017 at 310 Riverside Drive.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Name and address for the record.
My name is Cesario Gill. I'm the agent acting on behalf of 310 Riverside.
Okay. Is there anyone here this evening that has an interest in the application CAV 57-2017 at 310 Riverside Drive? Okay, sir, if you can proceed with the presentation.
All right, we're asking for three minor variances. One of them being the height of the overall building from what the allowable is 9 meters to 9.35. And we're also asking for the lot coverage from 35% to 37.7. And we're asking for also for the garage to project to 2 meters where the bylaw states that it should be only 1.5. We believe that the variance is minor in nature. And as far as some of the concerns that I've read, which is we'll, I guess, change the view of the street itself. The changes that we're asking for wouldn't be visible from the street level. Will not, no. Where the increase is only 1 foot on the overall building height, that is on a peak that's halfway down the building. Show us on your plan? Yeah, of course. Okay, so what we have here is the top portion of the elevation. So the main roof itself actually sits at the 9 meters, which is allowable. It's that back peak here that shouldn't be visible from the street itself that we've actually had to increase due to some structural members and to some headroom issues we've kind of bumped into. So what, sir? Headroom issues and structural members, they're there. But from a person, say, who's 6 feet should not be able to see it from across the street. So that variance is only for that portion of the roof? Yes. Okay. And then the other issue that has come up was the increase of the, let me just get the citing, from the 35% to 37.7. Now, the reason the new building that we're proposing actually sits on the same footprint along from the street, the front property line. It'll actually sit at the same distance from the street. So that increase actually occurs at the rear. And the house itself is actually narrower than what was there before. So from the street, you wouldn't be able to see the difference. And then I think the last one, which was going from 1.5 from the face of the house to the front of the garage, we've increased it by 0.5. Again, the overall structure of the building, the way it's designed, it doesn't show that kind of projection. It hides the projection fairly well because there's a covered porch.
Right, okay, so you have a covered porch and a massive projection of the garage.
Yeah, so as far as aesthetically, it does conform to the design of the neighborhood.
And that shows on L3, LR 310?
Yes, it's actually
LR 310?
LR 310 on page
6.
6 and 4.
Okay. Anything else you wish to add?
No, that's it.
Okay, just don't go too far. We'll ask you. Any questions?
Of course.
Okay, there was a show of hands. Who would like to come down first?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Matthew Ross at 305 Riverside Drive in Oakville. I'm a resident within 60 meters of the proposed dwelling.
At 305?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
While the variances requested have been termed as minor, it is my view that the combination of the three variances create a scale and mass which is inconsistent with the intent of the livable Oakville and the official plan. It is, as noticed in the report, predominantly an area of bungalows with some newer two-story additions. The property, considering the two-story nature of the property across the full width of the lot, again, in my view, creates a mass, scale, and height issue which is incompatible with the balance of the neighborhood.
Yeah, So is it your position that I guess you're saying that the abutting properties are all of a single-story stock?
Generally, yes, there is a 1.5 story on one side of it.
But the problem is, as you know, the bylaw permits 2 stories.
It does. The applicant is seeking a variance for height.
Right, but
and
only
for front setback.
Only in that very small defined area of the roof.
I understand that. There is also a fundamental increase in lot coverage. I do accept that the majority of that is to the rear.
Right, right. And the height, well, the height we discussed, and the front garage projection is masked by the covered porch. Okay, but you say in combination, given the character of the area. Okay, I understand.
I accept. I'm sympathetic to development, and I accept that the variance is in isolation may be minor. The combination is a more significant change than may be apparent.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Mr. Ross?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak to the committee? Yes, good evening. Name and address for the record.
Yes, Susan Fanelli, Fanelli. And we are at 263 Oakwood Crescent. So we back on, the house in question backs onto our property. So I guess when you look at the variances, what he's talking about, it does affect us in behind with the view. I second what was already said in that I understand the neighborhood is changing, but this is quite a significant change in the size of the house with the character of the neighborhood. But it's more for us in the backyard of that house. That 263 Oakwood has been in my family since 1976. My parents owned it. We purchased it from my father's estate after he had passed away. And we are considering at this point moving into that space ourselves. And I'm concerned with what's going to be now half of my backyard and the view we have with a big double story in it coming off the back. So I guess what I'm just asking, is there any way that, I understand the neighborhood is changing, can it stay within the guidelines as opposed to going outside the variance?
Well, I mean, depends on what you term the guidelines. If it's,
Well, the
you know,
bylaws, I guess.
Well, if the bylaws, well, this is the issue. You know, I think what I'm hearing is that, you know, the bylaw says you should have a certain height and you shouldn't exceed it.
Mhm.
But if you build a two-story, which the bylaw permits, it's not compatible. So you know what I mean?
Well, there are some that have done 2 stories in the neighborhood that are compatible.
So if you say meet the bylaw intent and purpose, means, you know, you don't need to go to the committee and I can build a 2-story height. That's what the bylaw
That's already
permits.
happened in the neighborhood though too, and it has happened in some other homes in the neighborhood that they've renovated and still put in 2 stories, but stayed within the bylaw.
Well, and that's what I want to hear. How does the additional 0.35 meters, for example, impact you? Like, if you look at the
Well, it's going to
plan,
be, it's just in our backyard, like we'll
course it will
have
be, yeah.
to look out and see at that. And I agree, the all 3 together make it quite a large
okay,
home.
I understand. Gotcha.
Thank you.
Any questions of Ms. Finelli? Thank you very much for your time. Anyone else wishing to speak to the committee on application CAV 57, 2017?
Good evening, Mr. Chair. My name is Bruce Emerson. I'm at 316 Riverside Drive.
316?
So 3 houses
Yes,
north.
Bruce Emerson.
I sent an email to...
Yes, we have your letter. I
Yes,
guess.
so
Yes.
just to follow up on that and following on from what Mr. Ross was commenting on. Our concerns are predominantly with the height and the coverage variances, specifically because of what they mean in terms of possible precedent for the area. So a lot of bungalows, a lot of 1.5 stories, and the houses that are 2-story, you know, conform with the bylaws and with the intent of the official plan. And our hope would that any new builds in the area also do that.
So, I can't speak for everyone else on the committee, but I have a problem with the unacceptable precedent because that almost implies that we're setting a new standard. And as you note, sometimes we support, sometimes we don't. Doesn't matter what another application said. It's you view the applications based on its own characteristics at the time it's presented, given all the other factors. So we don't set precedent, we just make decisions.
Right,
You know,
but the more...
others may try to use it as precedent, and we often remind them and correct them that, you know, our decisions are not like a court decision where you got to follow the Supreme Court of Canada. You know, we deal with neighborhoods that impact people's lives daily, right? So we don't have that sort of precedent. We have you know, we're guided by different tests, and precedent is not one of them.
But the more properties do vary from the official plan, the more the official plan doesn't matter anymore. That's our concern,
Right.
especially for the character of the neighborhood. We like it that way and can't see any need to change it.
Fair enough. Any questions of Mr. Emerson? Okay, see none. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak to the committee on this application? Okay, so, sir?
All right. I'd like to address some of the concerns that have been
Yes.
brought up. Again, we potentially could have built the house a lot larger. Wasn't our intent. Our intent was to make the design suit the neighborhood that was there. There are other homes. I know it seems like the neighborhood's being updated. There's newer homes in the area, ones that are actually larger than ours. We decided not to go with a 2-story, but to go with a bungalow loft in that place. The house itself, as far as its width, is actually narrower than what's currently there. We tried to stay within that 9-meter mark. Unfortunately, because of structural members and headroom issues we have had, we just increased it by 1 foot. Again, that 1 foot wouldn't be visible from the street or probably the rear. That peak of that roof sits somewhere in the middle of that building. And as far as the coverage, again, it's only, I think, 2.7%. Did occur at the back, and it mostly had to do with that covered porch.
Your SP1
Okay?
shows proposed coverage of 34.1%.
Oh.
And it shows proposed building height of 9 meters.
There was
So-
an issue. I sat down with one of the planners to discuss how they came up with their numbers. It was the way we went to calculate the numbers to do with the covered porch that caused us to go into the 37.7%. So initially, when we did it, the way we read the bylaw was incorrect, but we both came down to the agreement that it was actually 37.7.
So-
And it had to do with the porch.
So the porch
generates
coverage because it's covered.
Yeah, that's what covered.
And if you were to take the porch out,
If we,
the appearance of the building,
would,
at least in the rear yard, would remain the same?
yeah, it would remain the same visually. You
What
wouldn't
about the
notice it.
height?
The height, again, it was just a structural member and some issues we had
No,
with
I know,
bedroom.
but it was the same structural member issue that you had on your SP1, right?
The height, no, the height was correct.
No, but the height you show here,
Oh,
9 meters.
that I believe was just a typo from our architect, but all the numbers that we've asked for, we're actually only really require 0.3, not the 0.35. We're asking the 3.5 just for precautions. But the numbers that we've asked for, we've actually sat down with the building department to confirm them.
What are the setback required in the zone, do you know? Side yard. 1.2 meters, right? So you're 1.29 and 1.95. Okay. Rear yard 7.5. And you're providing 12.48. Okay. Anything, 11.96. Anything else you wish to add, sir?
No, we just believe that the design that we've kind of gone for, we did take into consideration the neighborhood, and we tried to stick to something that would complement the neighborhood.
Any final questions of Mr. Gill? Seeing none, okay, thank you. We'll take this matter to committee. Who would like to move a recommendation?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move a recommendation. I do note the objections from the neighbor, both in person as well as in written format, and I am very sympathetic with the neighbor's opposition for this development. However, given the plans and the presentation by the applicant, I truly feel that this application, contrary to our first application of the night, where again the housing stocks were mostly bungalows or 1.5, here in this instance the applicant showed a design that's very sympathetic with his neighbors and the area, given the fact that the second floor was built into the roof line. He provided considerate side yard setbacks as well as rear yard setbacks above what is actually required. It also holds the same footprint as the existing house with a moderate increase in the backyard. So given those parameters, I'm more inclined to concur with the applicant as well as staff that this application does satisfy the 4 tests under the Planning Act as well as the official plan. And I will move a motion to approve this application with the condition that the proposed dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the plans dated September 2016 as submitted, as well as our standard condition that the approval will expire within 2 years of the decision if the proposed development has not proceeded and/or a building permit not issued.
Okay, thank you for that. Discussion on a recommendation? See none, all those in support? No one opposed, the application has been approved. Ms. McKell, can you just start the next application, I'll catch up?
Ladies and gentlemen, we are calling CAV 58 of 2017 at 1377 Acton Crescent. Good evening.
Good evening, councilmember staff.
A name and address for the record, please.
My name is Peter Vazikas of Empire Design Company at 5 North Ridge Crescent, Georgetown, Ontario, L7G6E7. I'm here to represent the owners of 1377 Acton Crescent.
Thank you, sir. Let me just survey the room. Is there anyone here present for application CAV 58 at 1377 Acton Crescent? I see none. As you know, the staff have provided comments that they do not support one of your variances. So we'll have you go ahead and give us your perspective of your application before
Yes.
we take this matter into committee.
Certainly. Obviously, after your review of the justification report and the drawings provided to you, along with the feedback from the adjacent neighbors, it seems as if the issue of the height and floor area are not as imposing as once assumed, although the balcony still seems to be an issue. Based on the comments provided by Ms. Danny Morowitz and Glenn and Georgina Cook, we feel these objections do not hold much merit in this application due to the fact that these persons are not able to substantiate their objections with any proven facts and also are not available to speak before the committee members. Please refer to these photos that I'm going to present to you. And these photos, keep in mind, they were taken from the center of the existing house on the roof from 3 different angles where the proposed location of this balcony will be located. Photo number 1. This is the right view. Sorry, my bad. This is the right view from the center of the current home. Shows an abundance of trees, fencing, and wall area of the adjacent home. Photo number 2. This is the center view, facing directly towards the backyard, which I'll get back to in a second. And then photo number 3 is the left view, again from the center of the existing current home at the rooftop, I went up there with a ladder myself and I took these photos, and that's where the balcony is going to be situated. Abundance of trees, fencing, and no other homes. Yes, please. This one here is the most intruding view, which is the center view. But if you look closely, sure, this will work. In this area here, sorry?
Is that an elevated deck you're showing us?
I'm sorry?
Is that an elevated deck you're showing us in bubble?
No, actually, this is the neighbor's property, rear yard. They have a pool and they have a fence, and I've clouded the area at 1401 Acton Crescent, which is the neighbor adjacent. The clouded area shows only enough room to provide a concrete walkway around the pool edge, along with some box hedges at the fence line. There's absolutely no room for lounging or suntanning in this location. Now, also at the rear yard of the dwelling, the house, at this point, that's the corner of the house, of the existing house of 1401 Acton Crescent. It seems to be closer to the street than the majority of the new homes being built. In other words, this house is not a very deep building. In fact, their shed garage, right here, is actually adjacent to my client's property, is blocking most of their view from their rear yard amenity space from my client's property. I don't know if this shed garage has a building permit or not, but it does seem close to the property line, and it does block quite a considerable amount of view. Based on these items and the photos, it is to assume that the neighbor's pool patio area would be directly behind the main house of 1401 Acton Crescent, and the view towards 1377 Acton Crescent is blocked by their own shed/garage. Therefore, there is clearly no visibility of any persons lounging in the rear yard of 1401 Acton Crescent from the angle of the photo where the balcony is going to be situated, based on the comments provided from Glenn and Georgina Cook. Now, please take into account that my client is a grown adult with 3 children. He has no intentions of peeping next door. I mean, this balcony is only used for their own convenience and their own lifestyle. For example, morning coffee and maybe a late night drink prior to retiring for the evening. The pool area will be used probably, my guess would be 2 to 3 hours between Friday and Saturday. I mean, if we were to take a time frame between 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., the balcony may only be used for 1 hour, probably every other day at most. And I'm sure that my clients would ensure that there'd be no overlap in these schedules of usage between neighbors. As a comparison, I'd like to show you another photo, which you have in the justification report as well. This is a house across the street, assumed to be 473 Avon Crescent. That could be incorrect, but it is directly across the street from 1377. Shows a large second-floor balcony, which totally projects past the rear wall of the house. The view from this deck is able to oversee almost all the neighbors within a 180-degree radius and up to a 75-meter distance, whereas our balcony does not project past the rear wall of the main house. It is inset in between the house. In other words, the edge of the balcony is almost flush with the rear wall of the main house. Therefore, there is no view from side angles. Based on these facts provided, we feel that this item should also be considered minor in nature and request the committee to grant permission. I also have an addendum which I'd like to include with this application, if I may.
Addendum to?
Addendum to this application for committee.
What is it that you want to include?
I'd like to also include that we have just recently received a revised arborist report. Noted here in the bubbled area.
What's the date of it?
This one here, sir, is
Valentine's Day?
March 27th, 2017.
And what's the difference between the one that's dated February 14th and this one?
This one here was revised based on actual findings of the tree, which is at the center of the front lot line. If I may show you, the roots here are uplifting through the surface of the earth, and in fact, the tree itself is severely damaged and is actually drying out. The arborist tells me that the roots, the branches are drying out and the roots are being exposed to the surface. Due to the condition of the tree, he recommends that it be removed. Now, due to the proposed construction of the new dwelling, along with the demolition of the existing dwelling, he feels that this tree will not be able to survive the construction project and will reduce its lifespan to about 2 years at max. His recommendation is to remove the tree and replant additional trees in replacement of this one. And we're hoping that this is also acceptable as part of this application.
Okay, so there's a permit process, I believe, for something like that, if this committee finds favorable for the variances. Okay, any questions? Mr. Wazikas, is it?
Yes.
Okay, seeing none, don't go too far. We'll see if there's anyone here that has a concern. Yeah, you're going to have to file that arborist report.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I just
leave it
received
here.
it, but yes, I will.
And anything else you showed us there that's different from what we have?
I can leave these with you today.
Ms. Mikhail, on, there's not?
May I
Okay.
leave these with you today, the
Yes.
photographs and the arborist?
Yes, please.
And I'll supply new ones for the application?
No, just one copy is enough. The March 27th, is it?
Would you like the photos as well?
Yes.
Definitely.
Okay, we'll take this matter to committee. There's no one, again, anyone else here on application CAV 58-2017 at 1377 Acton Crescent? Okay, so we'll take this matter to committee. Who would like to move a recommendation? I guess staff are predominantly concerned with the balcony. They don't have any issue with the other variances. Ms. Mikhail, you're moving a recommendation? Yeah, that would be great, if you could, yeah.
Ball rolling, we can have a discussion.
Yes.
I understand the staff's concerns, but given the pictures that Mr.
Vozikas.
Sorry, Fuzikas.
No problem.
showed, the pictures taken were from the rooftop, and since he is not applying for a height variance, well, he is permanent maximum height. Hold on, I'm going to retract that then. How far were you up on that rooftop? Do you know the height?
I had a ladder up to the eaves, and I climbed up onto the roof, and I was standing pretty much at the edge of the roof eaves, which is pretty much the second floor of the proposed dwelling. Like standing on the balcony, basically.
Oh, okay.
If I was to stand on the balcony, that would be the location.
So you were on top of the roof was above 9, the roof is at 9 meters, or?
Well, the house currently...
It's a one-story, right?
It's a one-story house currently, but because of the grade situation where it comes up and then goes flat, at the backyard, there is a raised deck about 6 steps, because the main floor has to come up first and then it goes flat. So 6 steps to the deck, and then ceiling height of 8 feet, I'm at the eaves. So about 10 feet.
About 10 feet. And that's where your balcony is going to be sitting?
Yes, and the balcony is pushed into the house. It doesn't project out past the wall. And it's only about, I think it's 3 by 7 feet, I believe, on the drawings shown.
Yes, I did see that.
Very small.
I'm inclined to support the application, given that the applicant demonstrated that at the height from which the pictures were taken and the vantage points of the various directions, there is no negative outlook on any of the neighboring properties. Other than that, I concur with staff that the other variances are acceptable given the area and the neighborhood. This development does fit within the housing stock of the neighborhood.
Thank you. Discussion or recommendation? Yes, Mr. Hartcastle.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to express some concerns with respect to the balcony. The visuals were helpful. I struggle with vegetation, particularly on adjacent properties, as screening towards a built form condition. I continue to express concerns, and my concerns have not been addressed with respect to long-term overlook, and as such, I can't support the motion on the basis of the balcony alone.
If I may.
Not now, sir.
Okay.
We're in the middle of considering this application. Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none, okay, the recommendation is to approve the applications applied for, subject to those 2 conditions. All those in support? All those opposed? I abstain from voting. So that application's been refused. Okay, so we're dealing with application CAVA 59-2017 on 182 Charwood Drive. Sir, good evening. Name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Just before we get started, my apologies for any noise that I caused when you asked me to defer and talk to the neighbors.
Yes.
My apologies for any noise that came from...
Yeah, I was wondering what that was. Are you okay?
I am now. Again, my apologies. Through you, Mr. Chair, my name is David Capper. I'm with Glenn Schnarr and Associates, planning consultants acting on behalf of the Aidener property owners. For the record, our address is 10 Kingsbridge Garden Circle, Mississauga in Ontario, Unit 700.
Okay, I'm just for the record, is there anyone else here this evening that has an interest in application CAV 59-2017 on 182 Charwood Drive? Okay, sir, there doesn't seem to be anyone here, but we still need a presentation on this for obvious reasons.
Yes, and I appreciate the opportunity to give you that presentation.
I know, and I didn't vote. So that was defeated.
Wondering if that shows up clearly on
Yeah, sorry, just on a technicality, just before. Sorry, just, we're going to go back a bit. Just have a seat. Just have a seat for two
Regarding
seconds.
agents?
Yeah, just, no, just have a seat. So Mr. Vazakis, sir?
Sir?
On the previous application, we had a little technical glitch that our
Yes.
Secretary Treasurer picked up. We had a motion to approve, which was, didn't succeed. And then we need, Mr. Hardcastle, your motion to deny, is that what you were, is it to deny the whole application or a portion of it, or what is it? Yeah,
Yes,
so
please,
we're gonna
can you
help
come
you.
to the,
Yeah, that was a good catch, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I was expressing concerns
Right.
specifically with respect to the rear yard balcony, the
Right.
raised balcony.
Right.
I was substantially satisfied with the commentary of staff with respect to the other two variances. And
Okay.
I was prepared to support that.
Okay, so your recommendation is support variance 1 and 3, and 1 and 3 refuse variance 2?
Correct, Mr.
On
Chairman.
what conditions?
Subject to the two standard conditions, be in general accordance with the plans revised to exclude the second-story balcony, and our 2-year condition with respect to the issuance of a building permit.
That's not a problem, sir. Would the tree be included with this as well, to remove the tree?
Well, we don't have jurisdiction over trees, sir. That's subject to a tree permit, and through a site alt permit. You'll have to do a site alteration permit through the engineering department, and they apply whatever standards for municipal trees.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough.
So, a discussion on the recommendation to approve variance 1 and 3, refuse 2? Seeing none. All those in support? And you oppose? Yes, okay. Ms. Sherry McKell opposes, right. All right, I apologize for that technical glitch.
Okay.
You know, blood sugars go low after 9. Oh, we just reached 9. Thank you. So you have approval for variance 1 and 3, but not 2, okay? So we'd like you to submit the revised plans, removing the balcony as per the condition, okay? Can you do that by Friday? Yeah, sure, Monday's good. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Capper, we have your introduction. I apologize for that. So can you proceed with your presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I mentioned, we're representing the owners of the property located at 180 Charwood Drive. The owners are Josh and Hikran Aidner.
For some reason, the microphone's not coming out very loud. Can you
Speak louder.
Can you tap it? Okay, there you go.
So just by way of record, the Aidner family is a family of 5. This is an existing 3-bedroom, single detached house, single story. The Aidners have 3 children, ages, two boys and a girl, ages 14, 10, and 5. Currently, the 10-year-old and the 5-year-old share a bedroom. The intent of the application before you this evening is very different from what the typical construction that you see. The Aidners have chosen to renovate the existing building by adding additional floor. Different in the sense that it's not a complete demolition and rebuild of the property. So the application before you proposes 2 minor variances, and again, it's to facilitate a renovation of the existing dwelling. The first variance seeks an increase in the maximum permitted residential floor area. The maximum permitted in the zone is 41%, and our client is seeking the approval of a variance for an increase to 42.04, or a 1.04% increase, which results in a 7.23 square meter increase in floor area, or 77 square feet, just 78 square feet, just shy of 78 square feet. For reference, that's 8.5 by 9 foot room, very small room by modern standards. The second variance seeks an increase to the maximum building height permitted on the property, whereas the bylaw permits a maximum of 9 meters. The application seeks an approval of a variance for 9.61 meters, or a 61 centimeter increase in building height, which is 2 feet. There are some very unique characteristics of the property, and certainly if you've conducted your site visit, the first things you'll notice is that the property is located more or less at the bottom of a slope that continues up as you continue along Charwood Drive. The established grade for the property is measured at the midpoint of the property, and it measures at 87.4 meters. There is a just over 1 meter difference between the southerly corner of the property at the front lot line and the northerly corner of the property at the front lot line. With a significant sort of, as you've seen on your site visit, there's generally a flatter area at the top of the property, and from the front lot line, the property slopes up and to the north. The result of that, when you look at the elevations for the proposed dwelling, is that the established grade ends up being substantially lower than the actual grade at the base of the building. The actual height of the building above I'll call it the two-story part of the structure, is 7.27 meters in height. So the actual increase of building height is 2.89 meters. So very unique in the sense of the grading of the property and how it has an effect on the ultimate building height that's being sought. In my mind, a 60 centimeter increase in building height accounts for the attempt to try and build a reasonable roof line within the maximum permitted height and avoid having to move to a flat roof scenario, which could be accommodated on the site, and I don't think that represents the character of the neighborhood. Certainly with respect to the character of the neighborhood, you will have noticed that on your site visit there is new construction immediately to the north of the property, and it's acknowledged in the staff report that that's a 2.5-story building, that it complies with the bylaw. That is an example of a, it's not what I would consider a true flat roof, because there is sort of a mansard roof that is constructed within the roof line here.
Suggesting is there's ways to design around the bylaw to provide for a roof, and the volume on the inside remains the same.
Yeah, and I think that the difference between the building to the north and the building that's proposed is this line right here. You know, ultimately, in terms of building volume, in terms of building height, more or less the same. And again, it is the unique characteristics of the lot that force the need for the variance for height. Overall, this is not a very high building when you stand at the northerly portion of the lot. Certainly from the other side of the street, it is a town-owned woodlot. The impact on the easterly side of Charwood Drive would be minimal because there are no houses there. The property to the south is a single-story dwelling, but it does have a 2-story component where it abuts the southerly portion of this building. So you're moving from a 1.5-story to a 1.5/2-story at the northerly portion of that building to a 2.5-story building, and then again as you move northward to another 2.5-story building. So I think there are some unique site characteristics that would warrant consideration for the variances that have been requested. Certainly I note staff's position. I have a different opinion in terms of the community character that exists in the area. It's certainly an area that is in transition. The Chisholm Street School to the southeast of the property is currently going through a redevelopment proposal by the town for redevelopment of new lots. So definitely an area in transition, and definitely an area that's going to be seeing new dwellings being constructed. Unless there's any questions, I'm happy to leave it there. The one other thing I would note, sir, through you, Mr. Chair, is that based on my review of the staff comments, there didn't appear to be any comments that were received on the record, either in support or objection to the application. I'd just like to note that for the record.
Okay, we'll take this matter in committee and issue a decision on this. Who would like to move a recommendation so we can start the discussion? Mr. Tulowski, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, despite the staff comments, I believe this truly is a minor variance. In situations like this, I believe you need to assess the impact of the variance being requested, and that's 77 square feet of additional area, which I do believe is minor. And I accept Mr. Capper's evidence that if this lot did not slope from north to south, this house would comply, or it would be off by 0.01 meters in height. And the treatment of the roof, I think, is sensitive to that increase in height. And frankly, I believe this solution requiring a variance is far more appropriate than the example of the neighboring house, which actually complied with the bylaw. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to move the application be approved as applied for, and make it subject to development proceeding in accordance with the drawings provided, and that a building permit issue within 2 years. And as the applicant noted, there was no objection to the application from the community.
Thank you, Mr. Tulowski. Discussion, recommendation? Seeing none, I actually was going to add the comments that Mr. Tulowski did, but he did it a lot better and more eloquent than I did, so. So recommendations to approve subject to those two conditions. All those in support? No one opposed. Your application is being approved, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Okay, we'll take the last application for this evening. It's application CAVA 122-2016 at 232 Mississauga Street. Mississauga Street, I guess, without the U. This was a matter that was deferred from July 12, 2016. And I imagine we have lots of progress, or maybe not.
Chairman,
So, Mr. Brown, can you, again, I'm just going to poll to see, is anyone here this evening that has an interest in application CAVA 122-2016 at 232 Mississauga Street? Okay, there doesn't appear to be anyone, but I guess you have some, maybe you can tell us what happened during the deferral, the variances that you're seeking, and what you're seeking now, and what's changed and all that.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Just for the record, my name is David Brown. I'm the planning associate at David Small Designs. We're the authorized agents for the owners of the property at 232 Mississauga Street, depending on where you're from. The application was on the committee's agenda some time ago. I did have a conversation with city staff. I'm going to suggest to you that we agreed to disagree. And to that end, did make some revisions to the plan. The second floor balcony was removed. There was a large accessory structure in the rear yard. It was my recommendation to the client that that structure be removed as well, to facilitate us to, or to enable us to create an acceptable, what I would call acceptable drainage plan for the rear yard. Otherwise, we would have an awful lot of covered area in the backyard of this property. The issue, if I may just jump to the planning report, it's the character of the area and the nature of the home that we're proposing to put into this neighborhood, and the question of whether or not it's compatible with the community. And committee is more than familiar with this part of town. I'm sure you will note that on the west side of the street, which this property is located on, is predominantly bungalow dwellings, 2 to the south and 2 to the north of this property, which currently is occupied by a dwelling. When you get to the corner to the north, there's a 2-story home that's been renovated. 3 lots south of us, there's a 2-story home that's got some renovations. Across the street, we've got a different character, if you will, for the street. There are some 2-story homes with large garage, or prominent garages, I would describe them. This is just to the south as we start to come up the street on this side. This is almost directly across the street. I'm noting this one in particular is a 3-car garage, and it's a predominant feature of the property, or of the house. And this is directly across the road from us. The subject property, as I said, is a bungalow dwelling, and you can see the two properties on both sides. There's a beautiful red maple tree in the front yard, which we are proposing to protect and preserve through this construction of the new home. A couple of the comments that were contained in the planning staff report, and I'm just going to focus my attention, Mr. Chairman, the hour's late, and I'm sure that your concentration is not that dissimilar to mine at this time of night. The Livable Oakville plan talks about a couple of things: character, scale, and massing. And when they talk about character, they're looking at what is the character of this neighborhood. This side of the street, we've got bungalows. Across the street, we've got two-story homes. As you start to broaden out from around this neighborhood, there's a mix of one-story, one-and-a-half-story, and two-story homes. The zoning bylaw does provide for a two-story home. I'm going to suggest to you the age of this neighborhood has a lot to do with the character, and as we're seeing a lot of these homes coming to the end of their life cycle, they're being replaced. The housing stock, the analogy I use is that the value of the land outpaces the value of the home or the dwelling, and we're seeing these areas, homes being purchased and replaced or renewed with new two-story homes. And to that end, what we're proposing, I'm going to suggest, is a new two-story home. Is that in character? One of the comments that we find in the character provisions of 311, now it's talking about vacant lots, but it does note that each dwelling should be of a distinctive design and not repetitive. And I read that to mean that character doesn't mean we have all the same house that looks all the same. We're going to have a different architectural styles sprinkled throughout neighborhoods, and it's encouraged in new development, and it's something that I think is appropriate when we're talking about renewal in neighborhoods like this. This home has been very intentionally and purposefully designed to bring this eave edge down closer to the first floor level. We've got a large entry feature here at the front of the home to sort of focus your attention, create that pedestrian-friendly type of home. There is a garage structure here which has two-story mass above that, and that is spoken to in the comments from the planning department, but I'm going to suggest that putting that two-story mass above, creating the roof lines that come lower on the opposite side, and this large entry feature here has the effect of minimizing the impact of that garage in stark contrast to those homes directly across the street. Those are a product of a different age of development, and the 80s were very good and resulted in a lot of really good housing stock being built across the GTA, but as we reflect on it, we're starting to question whether having these dominant garages was the best thing for our neighborhoods. The other issue is with respect to scale. I'm just going to come back and say that bringing this front roof line down here so that across the front we do have a reduced impact of the two-story home. There's this portion here that sits back on top of the garage. The bulk of the two-story mass is at the rear of the home in the rear yard. And you can see that through the side elevation here that we've got the two-story portion through the back. I would note that the roof line's kept at the top of the windows through this side yard, as well as on the opposite side as well. We've got a two-story mass across the back. We're not asking for relief with respect to height or setbacks. We are asking for a variance in lot coverage. We're over by about 2%. I would note, just to give the committee some context, that the area of the covered porch at the rear of this dwelling is right in this area here. That represents approximately 5% of our total lot coverage. So the home, or the structure, if you will, the footprint is below the maximum coverage. This covered porch area does put us over by that 2 and change percent that we're asking for relief. With regards to the floor area, we're asking for an increase in floor area of approximately 488 square feet. I've got square meters on my notes. Whoops. It's square feet, I assure you. And that is specifically driven by the request or the desire to have 4 bedrooms on the second floor. And that 4th bedroom sets the floor plate for the second floor, and that translates down to the ground floor. There is some open to below space in the family room at the back of the home, but it's that square footage of 488 translated over 2 floors. You're looking at about 200 square feet per floor, and that's representative of that 4th bedroom on the second floor. I'm going to suggest, when we're talking about the massing impact that arises from that combination of floor area and lot coverage, that the design in the front of this home as it relates to the streetscape reduces or minimizes any impacts that I would offer could result from a 2-story home being placed on this street between 2 single-story homes. I'm going to suggest that we are going to see renewal in this neighborhood, and it strikes me that the neighbor to the south, who was in attendance at the previous hearing supporting the application, is looking to redevelop his property. The neighbors to the north, we've been talking with them, and they have no objections to our application. And one final comment, we do comply with the front yard setback and the rear yard setback. I would note that our footprint is bigger than the neighboring lots, but I would also note that those homes are small relative to today's requirements. So, Mr. Chairman, while I can appreciate staff are concerned to protect and preserve the intent and purpose of the bylaw and the official plan, I believe that in this instance, on this development, that the intent and purpose of that plan is being maintained. I'd be pleased to answer any questions, and I thank you very much for your time this evening.
Note that staff had 2 summaries.
Yes.
Yeah.
They also referenced different provisions of the official plan, but I wasn't, well, I called them out now. I didn't mean to.
That's fine.
That happens.
Any questions of the agent, Mr. Brown? All right, I think we had a thorough presentation, sir. Thank you. And we've given you a bit more time, lugged you a bit more time because,
Appreciate that.
you know, there's no one here, and we're very attentive and wanted to make sure you had the opportunity to provide us your full presentation. So having said that, we'll now take this matter into committee, seeing, you know, just for the record that there's no one here to speak to this matter. And we'll proceed with a recommendation. Who would like to move a recommendation on this application? Thank you. Mr. Hardcastle?
Mr. Chairman, after having reviewed the materials and heard the thorough presentation from Mr. Brown, I'm gonna disagree with the staff position on this, and I'm gonna put forward a motion of approval. I believe that the design of the building has been undertaken sensitively in order to mask some of the height and the additional square footage that is contained within the building. And I have no concerns with respect to the driveway width as it deals with the hammerhead component of the driveway. So I'll put forward a motion of approval, finding that the variances conform to the 4 tests of the Act, and put forward 2 standard conditions. The first being that the building could be constructed in general accordance with the plans as submitted, and the second being that the variance will expire within 2 years if a building permit's not been issued.
Mr. Brown, what are the date of the plans? February 2015?
Confirm that, Mr. Chairman.
Because I know you had some previous plans on the previous application. I don't know whether, we just want to make sure we're reflecting.
Sounds like the date of the previous plans.
The David Small design plans that we have as part of our package show a date of February 2015.
Mr. Chairman, I just point out that on the basement plan, we have that date, but on the ground floor plan, there's a January 6th, 2017
Well, we have the
date.
elevation, A5 is February 2015. The
Yes.
rear left side elevation is 2015. The basement floor plan is 2015. The ground floor plan is February 2015. The second floor plan is February 2015. Is there something different that you have?
Yes, I've got plans here, Mr. Chairman, that I submitted with the renewal that have dates on the elevations of January 6th, 2017. I'll leave those with the Secretary Treasurer just to make sure we're all looking at the same plans.
Yeah,
These plans will have the balcony removed, or will not have a balcony.
We're working off a different set of plans. So, can you put up your one that shows where the deletion is, so we're, just to make sure we're speaking the same language here.
Show you that there is no balcony there. Those of you with super X-ray vision, January 6, 2017, I'll leave these with the committee.
Yeah, no, we have that. We have that. Okay, that's
This is where
fine.
the balcony was before, and it's called the Juliet balcony.
Okay.
Just across that door.
So then it suffice to say, in accordance with the plan submitted with the revised application?
Yes, as long as we've got the same dates, and I believe that.
Yeah, no, we have that. I wasn't going by revision date, but you have the same revision date on, as we do, so we're good.
Perfect.
Okay, so Mr. Hardcastle, in accordance with the plan submitted with the revised application, so we're, okay, so the recommendation is to approve subject to those two conditions. Any discussion on recommendation? Mr. Tulowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to support my colleague's motion. I just wanted to add 2 points that with respect to the coverage, it is only being required the variance because of the porch, not the actual building. And I just note that in terms of the size of the variance being requested, it is almost identical to what we dealt with recently on Acton Crescent. And frankly, I believe that this design is more sensitive to the neighborhood than that previous one was.
Thank you, Mr. Tulowski. Any further comments, questions? Seeing none? Okay, so we'll take this now into a vote. The recommendation is to approve subject to those two conditions. All those in support? No one opposed. The application has been approved. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, good evening. We have confirmation of minutes. We have minutes of February 28th, 2017 and March 14th, 2017. Everyone was here. Who would like to move a recommendation on both those minutes as presented to us? Yes, Ms. Mikhail? Okay, discussion on those minutes. Seeing none, all those in support? Okay, the minutes of February 28th and March 14th, 2017 have been approved. And an adjournment?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all those in support? Unanimous, we're adjourned. Okay, thank you.